Welcome. We're going to take a look at free verse poetry. And your first question might be, well, what is free verse poetry? And that's a perfectly logical question to start with. So it is poetry that is free of limitations, as it says there. So that means there's no regular meter. All right. So all the poem, the lines of the poem can have different number of syllables in each line. There's no pattern that's got to follow there. No rhythm, no iambic pentameter, or anything like that. There is no regular rhyme scheme, so the last word of each line does not need to rhyme with some corresponding other word at the end of the line. So you can have some random rhymes in there, but there's no pattern to it. There's no consistent pattern to it, the sort of rule that it creates that it has to follow. And as a result, there's kind of no rhythm to the poem. You can create rhythm, but this doesn't have this consistent required rhythm throughout it that would have a pattern to it. And that's kind of the key. There's no patterns to any of these things, although they may randomly appear. They cannot have a pattern to them. That is what free verse poetry is. So essentially, no requirements for a free verse poem. There should be no noticeable pattern of any kind. That's what it basically boils down to. So, what does a free verse poem have? Well, obviously, it's going to have words and lines and all that kind of stuff, but it will also have a theme and convey thoughts and feelings, as all pieces of literature do. And that is the primary function of a poem. So, even if you have meter and rhyme in it, it should still convey some ideas and some have a theme, have a message. All right. So you can throw in to give you some ideas if you were writing your own free verse poem. You can still put in some figurative language, not required though. You could put in some sound devices, but no consistent pattern with rhyme or meter. All right, and again, not required. And you can put in imagery. We talked about that as well. So you can still have these things in there, but just in different ways for the sound devices. The imagery and figurative language is still going to be in there just as much as any other poem. So it seems a bit different, but it's not really different at all. And you've read tons of free verse poems over your time in school. All right, so Walt Whitman is considered sort of the father of the free verse. All right, you may know him from his local bridge. He's buried in Canada. He spent a lot of time up in New York and Brooklyn, but he was also a resident of New Jersey, and that's where his eternal resting place is. So he popularized the form of free verse in the mid 1800s, and this marked a significant departure from the sort of strict forms that had come before it. It was sort of breaking free from all of that. And when people read poems, they expected there to be rhyme, meter, this very strict rhyme scheme and pattern and all these things. And he was like, forget it. Now he did write poems with rhyme schemes and all that kind of stuff. He was very well versed in writing those types of poems also. But he just kind of embraced this free verse and wrote a lot of it, and it kind of caught on in America and around the world. People kind of dug it, so it worked out well. It's also kind of seen free verse is seen as an American form, an American art, and it's kind of fitting. Walt Whitman is popular in the 1800s, mid 1800s through the end of the 1800s, and that is when America is going through a lot of turmoil and trying to really change who it is. That's when the Civil War occurs. And this is sort of a fitting reflection of what the country is doing. It's trying to break free from all these restrictions of the past and embrace a new world. And some of it's going well and some of it's not going well, as you are certainly aware. However, this free verse kind of matches that moment in American history. So it's very fitting in that regard. Not the father of free verse, but somebody who embraced free verse and is certainly very popular even today, is Langston Hughes. We've looked at some of his work, and you have looked at some of his work over the course of your time in school here. So he writes, again, there's plenty of poems of his that have strict meter and strict rhyme. and he was certainly a genius in that regard. But he also embraced the free verse, and a lot of his poems have that sort of free feeling to them with the subject matter and with the pattern and the form. So we have here Dream Keeper, a short poem by Langston Hughes. Bring me all your dreams, you dreamer. Bring me all your heart melodies, that I may wrap them in a blue cloud cloth away from the too rough fingers of the world. And Langston Hughes, free verse poem, no rhyme scheme, no pattern. It's a free verse. This is another free verse poem by Langston Hughes, Jukebox Love Song. I could take the Harlem night and wrap around you, take the neon lights and make a crown, take the Lenox Avenue buses, taxis, subways, and for your love song, tone their rumble down. Take Harlem's heartbeat, make a drum beat, put it on a record, let it whirl, and while we listen to it play, dance with you till day. Dance with you, my sweet brown Harlem girl. That's got some rhyme in it. It's got meter to it, but it doesn't have a strict pattern that it's following throughout. And that's what you're able to do with free verse that you're not able to do with strict patterns of poetry. The last poem here, we're not going to go through it, but because you'll read it more in 11th grade, you'll take a deep dive on it. This is Walt Whitman, one of his poems, A Noiseless Patient Spider, is a well-known poem. And you can see here, spider isolated, surrounding itself them. The last words don't rhyme. You can tell just by looking at the lines that they have a different number of syllables and no pattern to them. And so this is a clear free verse poem. And when you read it next year, you can start with that and point that out to your teacher.